I'll get into trouble for that one. The stories of what used to be. So I want to tell you a story today. And I want to start off by telling you a story about Dave from Huntly. Dave from Huntly. And his older brother, Richard. So Dave and Richard were the sons of Jim and Shona. And they lived in Huntly. They grew up on a rural farm. They had a small town life. They didn't live a big life. They lived a small town. Their existence was kind of, this is all I know. This is all I'll ever know. Parents were born and bred there. Their grandparents were born and bred there. And Dave got a little bit bored with farming. And Dave was like, man, I've had enough of this. I want to see the big bright lights of the city. I want to move to another town. So he had this discussion with his dad, and he said, I think I want to leave this rural life behind me. I want to go to the big city. I want my inheritance. I want to move. I want to do things, but I can't do anything with no money, so you should give me some money. Imagine that conversation with Dad. That wouldn't go so well, I wouldn't have thought. But Dad, being the man that he is, he sold the family Falcon. That's a Ford Falcon, in case you're wondering there, if you're not car people. Gave his sons a share of inheritance, and so Dave left Huntly for the bright lights of Auckland, got himself a bachelor pad in Grey Lynn, lived the life on K Road, head up to the bright lights, the fash bars and the restaurants, had a lot of friends who loved him spending money on them, I should say, but weren't so keen on them spending any money in return. Anybody ever had any friends like that are keen to, well, you've got the money rolling around, they're keen to be involved, but then on the other side of it, they're not so friendly? Well, eventually, the money ran out and the friends disappeared as well. And Dave kind of found himself in a place of like, well, I haven't got any money. What am I going to do now? I can't, the bank rolls run out. The Ford Falcons aren't worth that much these days, so, the money ran out fairly quickly, unless you've got a 78 original low-kilometre one like one of our friends in the congregation here. But he got so hungry that he used to eat some of the leftovers of food, and what he did was he actually moved from the bright lights of the city to Gordington. Anybody know where Gordington is? All right, we've got a few things, similar place on the same Waikato plain as Huntly, but a little bit over the other side. And he got so hungry that he used to eat some of the leftovers of the food that was there on the pig farm, and he found himself being in an environment where he was like, this sucks. I used to be in a place where I was doing well, and then I'm now eating the leftovers of the food. For those who haven't picked it up already, this is a Ryan Sims version of a story in the Bible called The Prodigal Son. And I want to pick up the story in the Bible in Luke 15, verse 17. If we can have that on the screen, that would be great. From verse 17, when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. Next verse. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up, went back to his father. And while he was still a long way off, his father saw him, was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring on the best robe, put it on him, put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, bring the fattened calf and kill it, let's have a feast and celebrate. That's in Luke chapter 15, verse 17. Let me tell you a little bit more about the story and behind the story. Often we hear something and we think, I wonder what's the context with that. I wonder what's in behind that. See, in the culture of the day, for a matured man to run was totally off topic. It was considered, that's not what mature men do. They don't run. They don't have to, in the day they wore garments, skirts, kind of things, if you like, tunics. And for them to lift up would show some leg, and that was unacceptable in the day for them to do that. It would be kind of like, I was thinking of some analogies, and I was kind of like perhaps asking your nana to do a chin-up competition. It's culturally unacceptable, depending on your nana, of course. You may have a super fit nana that can do chin-ups, no problem. So the story paints a picture of something that breaks the culture of the day. The story also talks about the son taking the inheritance from his father before it was time. And that was another bad idea in the day. It was even considered worse if the money that was given was taken out of the land. It's kind of given your inheritance in Huntly and spending it in Auckland, 09 territory. Can you imagine? Probably similar to taking money out of Thames. Can you imagine? You take money out of Thames and you spend it in Auckland? Wow. The community of the day would have likely kicked him out of the village if that was found out. And that's possibly one of the reasons why the father in the story was running to the son. He was trying to protect him from what the village was going to do to him. See, the cool thing in the story is that despite what the son did to the father was waiting for him to come back. And I don't know about you, but being a dad myself and being a son myself, there's something about a father-son relationship that does something to me. I can be watching a standard film or a TV show, and all of a sudden there's a moment in that TV show or movie where a father hugs his son, or a father says, "I'm proud of you," or a father says something to his son, and all of a sudden I can feel like, man, there must be some onions in this room somewhere, or I've got a bit of a choking up inside. There's something that an emotional reaction to a father-son, and that's not to bring down any mother-son relationship at all. It's what I'm talking about today is a little bit in father-son kind of connection, because there's something about a father's love that does something to us. And in this story, if we think about the father that's running and why he was running, there's even more compassion and forgiveness in the story. See, not only was there instant forgiveness, as soon as he saw the son returning, he broke normal accepted cultural protocol, ran towards the son to forgive him and keep him safe and welcome back into the house. Did he deserve it? No. He didn't deserve it, but he was given grace. The father put aside all the hurt and opened his arms in forgiveness. Not only did he forgive him, but he opened the doorway to his home again. See, the son was hoping just to come back, even if I'm just a slave, even if I'm just a worker in it, it's a better environment than eating pig slops in Gordonton. He was restored back to the full privilege of being the father's son. He had the full right of being the father's son again. And that's what God's grace is like. See, in the story, the father then orders the servant to bring the best robe, and no doubt that was one of his own robes. And he ordered a ring for the son's hand, which is a sign of authority and sonship, and sandals for his feet, which is a sign of not being a servant, of full ownership in the house. See, servants didn't wear shoes, nor rings, nor expensive clothes. In that day, it was considered, when the story was told, it showed that there was a full forgiveness, full acceptance. Then a fattened calf was prepared and a party was held. Now, fattened calves, I don't know what your interpretation of a fat calf is, but when this story was told, it meant that there was a real big party going on. It was a special occasion, and it was a rare and complete celebration. It was a huge event, and it was a statement. This story talks about a statement to the community that says the father runs towards the son, the heart of the father towards the son, and it also talks about the heart of God towards us. See, the story in the Bible was really showing us what God's heart is towards all of us. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this morning, what about the Bible tells us of what God's heart is towards us. So I've got a bit of a list here, which I'm going to go through, if that's okay. Good, we've got a few nods there. Good, I'll carry on. It says we're accepted. It says that we're loved. It says that you're valued. It says that you've been chosen. It says that you are the head, not the tail. It says that you are more than a conqueror. It says that God will never leave you nor forsake you. It says you're forgiven. It says He removed all of the wrong things that we've done in our lives as far as the east is from the west. I really like that statement because north and south is measurable. East and west is not. As far as the east is from the west. The Bible says there's nothing that can separate us from God's love. It says that before we were born, He knew us and that He knit us together in our mother's womb. It says we're wonderfully made. It says that we're God's workmanship, His poem, His work of art. In Ephesians 2:10, there's a verse in the Bible that says, "For we are God's masterpiece. He's created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things He's planned for us long ago." And sometimes when you unpack a story, you can see what the real meaning was and behind it. And we can read a verse like that and just think, okay, we're God's masterpiece. But the original meaning of that word is that we are a work of art. It actually means in the day when an artist was doing their work and then they created their masterpiece, their best work of art, the work of art that they were most proud of, they would display that work of art for others to walk past and view. That word that means that is what is in the Bible here for you. That's how God sees you. It says, the Bible says that he has a purpose and plan for your life, a plan for good. It says that we have a refuge and a shelter in Him, that He's our comfort and He's our defender. It says that you can trust Him. The Bible talks about how great it is that the Father can call us the children of God. I love that. We're God's kids and we're welcome at His table. So what does the story do for you this morning? What does the story of Dave from Huntley do for you this morning? Or the prodigal son, whichever way you want to look at it in the Bible in Luke. Well, I'll tell you what it does for me. Those onions that I was talking about before, that's what it does for me. It totally chokes me up because I'm the prodigal son. I'm the Dave from Huntley. Let me tell you my story. See, I did my own thing in my life. I ignored God. I knew of God, but I wasn't interested in following Him at the time. I turned my back on what He wanted me to do, and I made some pretty big mistakes along my journey. I thought that my way was better than His, and I wasn't interested in listening at the time. I wanted it all now instead of waiting on God's timing. I thought I knew better, but it wasn't the pig food from Gordonton that brought me back. It was the lowest point in my life. I had no way to keep running. At that time, I had a failed marriage. My marriage now is my second marriage. I've been through divorce. I was broke. I was unemployed. And I was in a space where I was not able to hold my head up high. There was a failure hanging over my head at the time. I walked the lonely road back home, the walk of shame, the walk of failure and those words that accompany it. You'll never amount to anything now. See, I told you you were nothing. You can't go back to God. You've let Him down. But one of the greatest things in the Bible is there is always a but. See, my God, God the Father, saw me coming. He saw me from a long way off. And He started running. He welcomed me back in with wide open arms. He gave me the robe, the ring, and the sandals. He set up the party and He welcomed me home. Do you know, I went on a long journey after. So I came back from Australia. It's about 10 years ago now this happened. And I had that failure. I'm never going to be able to do anything significant for God again. And I got a job and I was walking down Queen Street. I was listening to some music on my headphones. And I felt God say to me, I'm a big believer on God talking to us through, whether it's through His written word or you can hear Him. A big believer in that. And I felt God say to me, I'm proud of you. Now, I was coming from a place of feeling absolutely unworthy, absolutely never going to be able to do anything for Him again. And God said to me, I'm proud of you. So I was listening to music and I said, yeah, okay, that's good. And then God said, no, you're not getting it. You're not understanding it. I'm proud of you. And I said, yeah, I know, I heard you. And then God showed me a picture of Him lifting my chin up, just very gently, just lifting my chin up, making me look directly into His eyes. And at that moment He said, I'm proud of you. And at that moment inside, the tears started coming down. and there was an acceptance of the Father running to the Son. And I don't know if you've ever been walking down Queen Street at peak hour on a work day in a suit, bawling, snot bubbles, everything going on. But I didn't care because I was in the presence of God, and a God that ran towards me, wrapped his arms around me. See, he told me that he was proud of me and that he loved me. He told me that he has a purpose and a plan for my life. I never once imagined that I would be in a position to be able to stand on a platform and preach the goodness of God to people of Thames. But God can turn things around, and he can do it in my life, he can do it in your life. He told me to stop thinking of myself as a failure, and he showered me with grace and forgiveness. He forgave me, and we went on a journey together. A journey now where God's taken me from the lowest point in my life to being able to help people walk through their lowest points and their highest. We get to celebrate with people the ups and the downs of life. And it was a journey of forgiveness and restoration. But that's my story. That's my history. That's what I've come from. And that's part of my life that I've left behind as I now am able to stand tall in who God says that I am. See, I'm not defined by the labels that used to define me. I messed up my life big time. But here's the thing about God. Even when we mess up, his disappointment with our sin or our mistakes will never be greater than his love for us. Isn't that awesome? I'll say that again. His disappointment with our sin will never be greater than his love for us. I'm really excited about that this morning. I want to tell you another story this morning while we're on the story track. Okay, is that all right this morning? I'll carry on, carrying a story. I want to tell you a story of a man who lived 2,000 years ago. He's a man who wasn't like anyone else before him, and there hasn't been anyone else after. He lived for 33 years, and during that time smashed local culture. He provided a new way to do life and trained up a bunch of guys to carry on his legacy. See, this guy was born into a family in a way that was culturally unacceptable for the day. And in that day, there was talk of a king who would come into the world and save his people by the sword, a conquering king of royal lineage. But that wasn't how this guy started out in life. See, this guy had a really interesting family. Anybody can relate to having a really interesting family? Yeah? Probably those who haven't put up your hand are either not listening or not wanting to acknowledge that you have a really interesting family. Listen to this guy's family line, right? We think we've got a really interesting family heritage, right? Listen to this. His family line included a 100-year-old first-time dad. Any parents here? Can you imagine being 100 when you have your first child? His lineage included a 100-year-old first-time dad, a guy who slept with another man's wife and had him killed, a prostitute, and another man who had 2,000 wives. That's a busy house. And a woman from a very controversial mixed marriage. That's his lineage, this man's family line. It wasn't what was expected. And the cool thing about this story is that it continues that at the age of 30, he started healing people. He started helping people see God in a different way and breaking old ways of thinking. See, he gave people freedom from the rules and the regulations of the day. He gave them a hope in a future. And then one day he died. But that's not the end of the story. He died on a cross, a brutal and cruel death. And that death on a cross, the Roman way of crucifixion, was the worst possible way to die. It was the most humiliating, most painful way to die. And all hope seemed lost at that time. The people who had done life with him were distraught. And that happened on a Friday. But on the Sunday, reports came out that his body wasn't in the burial tomb anymore. And stories tell us that that man met up with people who he knew and that he was alive again. If you haven't worked out who the man in this story is, his name's Jesus. And we believe in the power of Jesus. See, thousands of years ago, there was a decision made by two people that created a separation between man and God. There was a gap that existed. And when Jesus died on that cross that day, he bridged the gap between God the Father and us as humans. He took all of our bad deeds, all of our mistakes, all of our sin, and paid the ultimate sacrifice for us on that cross. Our slate has been wiped clean. You know those things that you can get, the kids have, where you write on them and then you pull a lever across and it wipes it, Magnadoodle, that's it, I think. That'll do, something like that. Our slate has been wiped clean. See, by that act, our history doesn't need to define us. Who we were brought up to be, what our circumstances were, what we believe, what we think, what we've been told, doesn't need to define us in Him. See, we might have done some bad things, some stupid things, some things we don't even want to talk about, but by Jesus dying on the cross, the Bible tells us, as I said before, those things can be removed as far as the east is from the west. See, here's the deal today. Are you ready? Here's the catchphrase for you to take home today. Your story can be history with His story. Your story can be history with His story. And His story is He came 2,000 years ago, died on a cross, separated Himself from God to bridge that gap for you and for me. Shortly, we're going to have a meal together. We're going to sit down around the table and eat at the same time. Anybody like to gather together to have a good feed together? Yep, okay, we've got a few honest people here today. There's something awesome about being able to sit down together and have fellowship and have connection and eat together. And in the Bible, eating together was a common occurrence, and it said that when Jesus Himself wanted to talk to His disciples, wanted to get together with the boys, wanted to have a chat, they ate together. They used that opportunity to talk into their lives. See, it's a place of connection, it's a place of acceptance, and it's a place of value. And I want to say this morning, you are welcome in this place. You are welcome in this place. See, this church, this group of people who gather together here every Sunday morning are awesome. I'll just put that out there. I think you're all awesome. But we all have a past. We've all got stuff in there. We want to kind of put that in the back room and shut the door. Do anybody have those cupboards where you kind of just put everything in there and please don't ever open that door because everything's going to come out? Yeah? Well, sometimes we put the stuff that we think, man, I don't even know how to begin dealing with that. I don't even know, I can't deal with that side of me. There's something that I did that I can't even think about, and we push it all into that room and we shut that door and then we never go there again. I believe today is an opportunity for you to be set free from that room. See, all of us have done things we aren't proud of, but we're a group of people whose past isn't dictating our future. And I want to say this morning, that catchphrase is a direct download from God to me this morning. Your story, our story is history with His. See, we all have a hope and a future in God, and you can too. See, today, before we go and sit down together, before we share a meal with each other, I want to provide an opportunity for you to put your past behind you. There's a song that we sing in our church, and the words are this: no matter what I've done, no matter where I've been, no matter how I fall, you pick me up again. You've removed my shame. You take me as I am. You call me justified. Now I'm covered by your grace. See, God's grace sets you free. Do you want to be set free this morning? Your story can be history with His story. It doesn't matter what you've done. The Bible tells us that to begin this journey with Jesus, all we need to do is confess with our mouth and believe with our hearts that Jesus Christ is Lord. That Jesus is who the Bible says He is, and that He has the power to set us free, to bridge the gap between us and God. I'm really excited about being able to do church here with you today, to be able to sit with you and have a meal with you and enjoy some good fellowship. But I'm also really excited that today could be the opportunity that changes your life. And just maybe if everyone could stand, that would be great. I just want to provide an opportunity before we get together and have a feed. I believe that God's moving in this place today, and I believe that God's speaking to people, and I want to provide an opportunity for you to let God change your story. Because as I said before, the journey with Jesus to have that forgiveness, to wipe the slate clean, to start again, starts by confessing with our mouth and believing with our heart that Jesus is Lord, that He came, He died on the cross, and He set us free. And just if you can just close your eyes, if you can just take this moment, this opportunity, just to kind of dwell on what's been said, to think about what God has been saying to you through me today. Because I want to ask you one question. If you're to leave this place today, get in your car, drive out the road there and have a car crash that ends your life, do you have 100% certainty knowing where you are going? Because if you're not, today's the day for you. I want to provide that opportunity. I'm going to be set free today. If you're in this place today and you feel like God's talking to you, if you feel your heart's racing, if you feel like, oh, what do I do here? I want to provide that opportunity where you put your hand up, where you respond to what God's doing in your life, and then I'm going to get you to pray a prayer with me that we're going to do that, just that. Confess with our mouth and believe our heart that Jesus Christ is Lord. Just with every eye closed, just examining where you're at. Who's in this place today that wants to make that decision? Who wants to say yes to Jesus? I see that hand, that's great. So good. Just looking out there, I see another hand there. Awesome stuff. God's moving in this place. He's not an angry God, He's a good Father. He's a God that wants to welcome you home. He's waiting at the gate, running towards you. Who else in this place would like to make that decision today? Just leave it a little while longer.